You see, as much as I love space, I do believe I don't want to go there anytime soon. These dangerous spider tick thingies apparently live on the moon and have been very suited for their environment in the Apollo 18 movie. They have potent venom that causes psychosis and severe violence in humans. These crab-like organisms have what seems to be some sort of shell that makes them look like rocks when they're not moving. Then when they want to move, they extend their 6 spidery legs and 2 large pincers through this outer shell. Man... I would freak the frick out. I remember when I was in my country and I was like 5 years old, human years, and my nanny told me to go out and get the sheets down from the clothing lines for her in the courtyard. And oh my god, there were these fucking things connected to all the clothing lines. They literally look like crab shells hanging in the air. As soon as I made a move to go get the clothes from the clothing lines, eyeing them in terror, hoping they would just stay there and not drop down in my hair, one started extending its legs like a goddamn face hugger. Dude, oh my god, the chills I felt. Dude, I was frozen in place just watching it, and I shitteth you not. It started descending slowly down towards me. I took a step backwards to start going in, the back porch of the house, and it moved sideways in my direction. I stepped forward. It matched my movement while in the air. Can you imagine? A little 5-year-old female who's terrified of these things, the utter inconceivable fear that was coursing through her entire existence? Then when she finally puts together that her body is apparently attached to this thing's web as it's crawling down one of its invisible strings towards her, thinking she's food, hell to the nah, man. That was the biggest and loudest fucking nope I have ever said in my entire life. I threw down the basket and ran inside the house screaming bloody murder, and then I went to my nanny, wiping myself all over her to get it off. I knew she wouldn't care because she's not afraid of them. She can literally hold them in her hand and wipe them on her dress. Apparently, nobody in my country was afraid of them except for me. Look. I love wildlife, but I don't want to be that close to it. Just like in real life. Unless it's some furry fox creature like me. If you're some kind of spindly thing with legs that look like pencil tips, no thank you. Don't come close to me. Leave me alone. And I'm sorry, but the fact that this little shit looks like a ball of spikes hanging in the air and then extending its legs like it was cracking its knuckles, getting ready to chow down, gave me severe PTSD when it came to weird-ass looking spiky spiders. It's why I like the big tarantulas that are furry or hairy, but have some girth, but not the tiny ones, whose legs look like they can poke your eyes out. Come to think of it, I don't even think it's the spider itself. I think it's the idea like that once they get on you, they can get lost on your body, and then like shortly after, like you don't know where they are. Not to mention a black widow spider tried to kill me as she was taking her last breath after I just sprayed her raid, and every time I moved in one direction, she would come after me as she was freaking dying. No. Hell freaking no. And sorry, but these disgusting stone spider things remind me of that, except they look like ticks. They come in all shapes and sizes, from small pebbles to very immense boulders, as we've seen in one of the alternate endings. And as you can see, kind of looks as though they have very sharp teeth. Now, as to why these creatures can camouflage so well on the move, nobody knows. But creatures only develop camouflage for 2 reasons: so they can be harder for something to eat them, and easier for them to eat something else. What was really intriguing about these creatures is that as far as we know, there's no other life on the moon nor in the solar system in that universe. So what are they doing there, and what do they eat? And is it possible they got there because somebody either brought them there purposefully or accidentally? This could mean that they did not originate on Earth's moon, or there's a vast ecosystem of other organisms that can also camouflage themselves that just were not revealed in the movie. Maybe the crew just happened to land at the wrong time and in the wrong area, or maybe they did something to threaten these creatures, which we'll get into later. Now let's get into what truly makes these creatures really terrifying. Their venom. These spider tick moonrock aliens possess a very potent venom that has very terrifying effects when injected into their prey enemies. They inject their venom by biting, and you will know that you were bitten by this creature when you start to see the veins around the area of the bite getting black. This could be necrosis, which is the death of body tissue. If you see this means that there's not enough blood flowing to the tissue, and so the tissue starts dying. And unfortunately, this cannot be reversed. The other symptom of having been bit by the Apollo 18 crab is the presence of bloodshot eyes. Also, antisocial behavior, and ultimately violent psychosis. It's not like we have a whole bunch of test subjects to experiment with, but from what we've seen, the venom or the effects of it looks to be fatal. One of the people seemed to die after his helmet was broken, and the other was directly killed by these things.
Jesus Christ! Hey! Oh Christ! Hey!
effects of the venom cause human beings to go into a rabid state, becoming delusional, psychotic, mistrustful, and aggressive. They also become very tired at first as their body works overtime to try and get rid of this foreign entity. Had this happen on Earth, it probably would have the same effect, but over time, their organs would probably shut down. What's really creepy about these creatures is that you don't even know what they are if you come into contact with them. The steel spider moon aliens tend to stay in their rock form even when picked up by the humans and carried inside the lander. They seem to be most active when the sun is not directly shining on the moon. This could mean either they evolved to avoid the daytime because of other creatures that were present during the daytime, or they hunted mostly at night, or that the ultraviolet rays of the sun are harmful to them. It's also possible that in the daytime they stay dormant to soak up the sunlight as a method of getting sustenance. We would think about aliens and other planets eating exactly the way we do, but it is possible that the aliens on other planets probably don't even have a mouth and probably don't need to catch other animals per se to eat. If that's the case, then the spider aliens probably killed the Apollo 18 crew or attacked them because they were on their territory. If these creatures feed via photosynthesis or something like that, it would make sense since the moon lacks resources to support complex life. That's why I really do think that these creatures came from someplace else, maybe another rocky planet, where they were also camouflaged with their environment. And if that's the case, they're probably really hardy equivalents to cockroaches since they have the ability to breathe or survive all celestial bodies with little to no atmosphere. It's also possible these creatures are more active at night because of the colder temperatures, which drives them to find warmer areas. When I saw the creatures in Godzilla vs. Kong that I call the stony crabs, it really put me in mind of the Apollo 18 organisms. Hell, what if that is them? What's also really creepy about these creatures is that they seem to talk to each other, but they do so using radio waves. The moon's atmosphere is very thin, so sound would not carry through it as well, and neither would smell. We got this idea when in the movie, the creatures' communication is picked up by the radio equipment on the moon, which causes interference in the connection between Earth and the moon, as well as the crew members with each other. Remember earlier I said that the crew could be threatening to these rock spiders? I mean, surely humans just landing on the moon wouldn't be so much of an issue for these things that stay dormant most of the time, right? But what if the humans did do something to piss them off? We've talked about the fact that these creatures most likely communicate using radio waves. We see that the creatures are very aggressive towards the crew and specifically the equipment that they brought to the moon. It could be seen as them trying to sabotage any communication that the humans have, but what if, because these creatures can communicate utilizing radio waves, that the radio signals coming from the Apollo 18 crew are basically spitting some vile curses at these things? Imagine you're a moon rock SCP creature and you're having a conversation with your women, and then some large armored thing suddenly plops down in the middle of your backyard, subsequently cock-blocking you and your stone bitches. And then, to boot, start speaking a whole bunch of gibberish with some curse words sprinkled in there. Not only would the terror from suddenly being invaded by aliens freak you out, but then the insults would drive home the notion that these things have not come in peace, because they surely won't let you come in peace. Oh, cringe, it hurts. What's even more terrifying, if you can believe that things can get more terrifying, is the graphic nature of how these things become parasites and why. In the Apollo 18 movie, we see the species' smaller individual, which are probably the baby versions, cutting an opening into someone's flesh and just sitting there. Mind you, these things are also venomous, but they're a parasite, and that's because you don't want them there and they want to be inside of you. The way that they parasite seems very primitive, which means that burrowing into warm-bodied things is probably something new for them. We said before that when it gets very cold, these creatures probably move to search for something warmer, and probably to get extra nutrients. Little ones might decide to dabble into some meat-eating fiascos. Also in the movie, there were these dead Russian cosmonauts, whose corpses looked as though they had the liquid sucked from out of them. They looked mummified, and being that one of the creatures was found inside one of the corpses, the one that was found in the lair, where a lot of the creatures hung out, means that these aliens were sucking on some human scissor. Now I know that we've thrown out a few theories here about why the creatures move and when, but since most of the creatures are seen congregating in craters that have notably lower temperatures on the surface of the moon, it's possible that they, or at least some of them, prefer their environment to be cooler. Maybe under certain conditions, or certain stages in their life, they require the temperature to be cooler, so they decide to hang out in the craters. Regardless, whenever somebody goes into the crater, the creatures are much more likely to come to life and attack whatever is in there much more readily and quickly than if those people were on the surface. Looking in the crater, almost all the rocks on the floor of that crater were actually these little creatures in disguise. Frickin' creepy. The creatures may still see warmth as an indicator of food, or maybe they just go off the movement or liquid that they smell inside of a human or another living being. Nasta. The juvenile rocky monsters probably go inside human tissue to stay warm, but to also sip on that man colada. The exterior of these creatures really looks like a rock, and honestly, I don't know how they seal themselves up so well that you can't see any seams whatsoever. They literally look like stones or rocks when you turn them around and look across the entire surface of these creatures. We've listened to the characters reacting by saying that the stone felt strange.
sample feels strange.
Sure, that one did like the fact that these aliens, because it's aliens to them, basically came here and nabbed one of their babies. Now, as to why the astronauts were saying that, it's possible that the weight that you expect from a stone of that size is off when you pick it up, and it feels kind of weird because it has some kind of life in it, and because it's carrying its soul force. Look, I don't freaking know. But since these creatures are in fact alive and they can move around, and they have, at least I'm going to assume that they have, a digestive system of some sort and some sort of respiratory system, the fact that there is movement in complex cells means that there's going to be some sort of heat output. The main characters would never really get that or feel the heat per se, because most of the time they're handling the rock with their suit or with gloves or some kind of apparatus. All this to say, if the bigger ones are warm just like human beings and other living organisms are warm, the babies might seek refuge under their mothers or parents, and they probably detect each other via heat or radio waves. Since when the astronauts are communicating with each other, they utilize radio waves and they are also warm, it's possible that the baby rock creatures could have thought that the humans were their mom. The baby rock alien thing's mother probably has a little crevice inside her that they can burrow into, and since they're all sharp rock creatures, the baby using his little pincers to burrow under his mom would not hurt her because she's made of frickin' rock. But a human is fleshy, and the little bugger probably didn't even realize he was hurting whatever it was, since, he probably thought it was mummy. It's also possible the creatures can detect harmful radiation or UV light. On Earth, we're mostly protected from these harmful rays of the sun that can cause cancer because of the magnetosphere, Earth's protective magnetic bubble that deflects most solar particles. If any of these dangerous particles do make it through, they are then suppressed by the atmosphere. The International Space Station sails through low Earth orbit, safe from radiation, and the station's hull also helps to shield the crew members. Since on the moon there's basically no atmosphere, there is no protection from these harmful rays. That's why the creatures prefer to hang out in the craters, and when they're not in the craters, they're hiding in their DLC rock skins out in the open on the surface. They also seem to freak out when there's zero gravity, as we've seen when they start floating near the end of the movie. This could have been a result of them all being in the same area and sensing the warm body, knowing that they could all take it together. We've seen them swarming and consuming humans before, like what happened to one of the main characters in the movie.
Jesus Christ.
The other thing is that the humans did pick up one of their kind, so they could have perceived that as a threat as well, and they were just like, okay, you clearly are a threat to us. You clearly are testing the waters here, even though there's no water on the moon. So we're tired of your ass being on the moon. It's time for you to freaking go. I'm more concerned with what other creatures lie in wait on the dark side of the moon, if any, or if these moon crater crabs are not native to the moon and were simply just brought here, what was their planet like, and what other monstrosities inhabited it? Thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.